who had played at the court of Conn of the 100 Battles. But in spite of its legendary past, the children regarded the harp almost like another grandparent, and indeed it had a name, Cride, which meant heart. Young ones were never scolded away from it where it stood draped in the MacLeod plaid, green and black with narrow lines of red and blue. The tightly woven wool protected the harp from smoke and dampness, though the children knew they must never touch it without first scrubbing their hands.
"There's oil even in your wee fingers," Ferchar said. "Oh, no, it's bad for Crida's strings."
He taught them all to play, but only Mairi found that music could express feelings she could not put into words. She would never be able to play like Ferchar, though, and when his hands wooed Cride, she answered his touch with mellow tones that filled the house with magic, songs of love and battle, songs of the sea and the birds. The neighbours, hearing, would come in, the other 2 households of the dwindled township of Aosta, gathering around the hearthstone in the middle of the single long room. Red-haired Andrew Nicholson, Ferchar's cousin and Catriona's father, he would tell stories in spite of the perpetual frown on his scrawny dark wife Morag. She had reason, now, to worry, poor woman, for her youngest sons, Lucas and Paul, had gone to the army of Victoria, the English queen, as had Mary's brother Calum. The eldest Nicholson lad, blue-eyed, fair-haired Barry, was still at home with his gentle golden Sheila. He would contest with Adam McNeill, thin and greying, to see whose jokes won the most laughter. Adam and his wife, Kirsty, with their 3-year-old twins, the flame-haired Bridget and Rory, were the only folk in Aosta who were not related. Mairi, with her younger brother Tam, and her little sister Eileen, had lived with their grandparents since their father drowned, and their mother died in childbed a few months later. At these gatherings, or selids, Mairi and Gran served round a brew flavoured more from peat in the water than from a few precious leaves of tea, but it was steaming, and it warmed the insides. From their byre at the lower end of the house, the cows listened as if the tunes made their sparse cuds juicier, and though Mairi's belly often cramped with hunger when she crept into the box bed she shared with Eileen, she had seldom gone to sleep without music, with some laughter, and Gran's blessing of the banked fire on the stone. This hearthstone, originally called a heartstone, had been the centre of their family's home from time out of mind, before the harp left Ireland, maybe even before the Peary or Pictish folk, or those who raised the stones where Gran took Mairi for midsummer sunrise, in spite of what the minister said. They were all Christians, but the old faith lived within the new one, just as Brigde, the ancient Celtic goddess of fire and poetry, had merged with Saint Bridget, revered as the nurse of Jesus and hence very powerful. Getting the peats that year had not been easy. Ferchar's back pained him too much for the digging, and Calum was off with his regiment. Calum had not been recruited with a guinea and a kiss from the laird's lady in the fashion of some landlords raising levies for the Queen's wars. Once clan chieftains had counted the swords of their clansmen as wealth and rent. But since the breaking of the clans after Bonnie Prince Charlie's defeat at Culloden in 1746, even chiefs who had not lost their lands seldom lived on them. They preferred the excitement of Edinburgh, Glasgow, or London. But that kind of high living took money, so some lairds sold their estates outright to men who had no ties to their tenants. All over the Highlands and the Islands, landlords saw that sheep were more profitable than farmers, and they refused to go on renting to families that had lived in the same place for hundreds and hundreds of years. Some tenants were driven out, even though their rents were paid, and others were evicted the next time their rents were due. The island of Lewis was owned by Mrs. Stuart Mackenzie, daughter of Lord Seaforth, but her husband was governor of